Hello, everybody. Today is the Sunday Sangha call, and it is the 19th of April. So this should be like morning time for UK people and afternoon in Indochina time, Thai time. So it's the usual. It's been like this for a long time. And today I'm gonna kind of elaborate on a little statement I had um, come from a friend in the Sangha. We had a quick chat the other day. I think he's in the call. Eunice is in the call, and yeah, we had a we had a little chat about practice, and he said something interesting. I was like, that's very interesting, actually. A lot of people don't notice that, and I also kind of forgot about that. It's like when we try to relive the past, when we look for uh, experiences to live again, we often look at the objects of the past. We look at the objects, we try to look for the actual like movie, for example, or the music, or the delicious tasting food. We look to the objects of the past, but often what we don't realize or what we don't actually recognize is the state of mind that one is in during those experiences of the past. And that's really interesting because generally, if you're in a sort of a mindless craving state, you don't consider these things. So that's why one is often really met with disappointment trying to relive the past. It's that kind of nostalgic, reminiscing kind of mind that wants to relive and experience the same pleasure of the past, but doesn't actually consider the state and all the other conditions that give about that pleasant experience. Um, I was thinking, wow, that's a really good observation. I really like that um, way of looking at it because um, it's really hard to actually capture a state you were in many years ago, for example, like 5 years ago, 10 years ago. I mean, Lord of the Rings came out in like 2002, and that's like what, 24 years ago? Now, the first time you watch that movie like that, wow, it's amazing. But this is 24 years later, and you watch it again, it's a completely different experience because what we are, it's completely changed. And this really does also tie into the view of this substantial self that is always there and just sort of falls into this permanent continuity kind of. It's sort of always going on and on and on. Rather, it's actually been a very much a large transformation of what we are. And so this, just wanted to say that there was a great observation, but this ties into a sutta, two suttas we'll talk about today. Um, one comes from the Anguttara Nikaya, and here the Buddha says, um, luminous is this mind, O monks, but it is darkened by the passing defilements. So the Buddha says here, one's mind is luminous in the absence or the lack of kilesa, defilement. And I thought that was like, oh, that's a really good way to also say, um, when you often hear like Dhammarato, for example, say like you're already okay, or using the phrase of language, you're already enlightened. This really ties into that little statement that the Buddha says that the mind is luminous, is already luminous. And so one does not have to like create luminosity, but just has to remove these obstructions of luminosity, the kilesa, the defilements that do darken the heart, do darken the mind. Um, and also in the sutta, it says like the ordinary, again, you always hear this phrasing, the Buddha says like ordinary putajana, run of the mill mind doesn't see that. and is really identified with the defilement, and in many ways tries to capture the luminosity of the mind through the world, tries to capture the joy through the world in some way. We all try to capture joy through some experience, like we're trying to capture that inner joy through some maybe through some form of sensual experience or whatever. And of course, we know that doesn't work. That absolutely just can never really work out very well. And even if you do have a really nice experience, it doesn't last very long. You know, so we're trying to find this luminous mind in many ways. When it's actually already what you have, it's already there. And so that's quite an important statement, important thing to realize and to shift one's attention to that inner world, so to say. And this ties in really nice to a sutta called this Sabasava Sutta, which is in the Majjhima Nikaya number 2. And this sutta is a really nice sutta. I think it's one of the really maybe like handful of suttas that you would definitely want to consider and look over a few times and to get a good picture of what the Buddha is trying to say in regards to this defilement, which is what darkens one's luminosity. And I can't think of anything myself personally that I have been trying to do my whole life, but to try to come back to this inner luminosity, this kind of longing for home. But it is through understanding and seeing how defilements really work that coming back to that inner joy is going to be a real living experience to really live the Dhamma. So this sutta is a really nice sutta, and the Buddha actually outlines. It's a very nice sutta because it's very practical. Like it it gives us a really practical prospect of how do you actually deal with these defilements. But the word asava slightly different than the word kilesa in the sense of it has this idea of being like a flow or an outflow. Like if you pop something, it flows out all over the place. Like if you were like an acne-ridden teenager like me, you know what pus is. When you pop a pimple or something, it goes all over the place. That can be quite uncomfortable and sort of uncontrollable, and that's what an asava is. The definition of an asava is. So the Buddha says, actually, there are 7 of ways I am going to talk about in regards to dealing with these darkening um, qualities of basically ignorance, of not understanding the way out, of following the flow of the asava that brings about all his kilesa. And kilesa is more like, you might say, chaining up or fettering oneself. You might think of the idea of having a ball and chain or something like that. Like you get a bit tied up and attached. It gives you the idea of getting hooked on something. Um, so we could go into those 7 ways. Um, and the first one the Buddha gives is seeing. Seeing. That's the first one the Buddha gives. This, I think, is a really good one to understand because he talks about in the sense of this seeing these 4 noble truths is what brings about liberation, and not seeing these 4 noble truths is why all beings go on and on in the perilous cycle of dukkha or samsara or whatever, not seeing the 4 noble truths. So that's why it's such an essential uh, one of these 7 ways. It's such an essential one is seeing these 4 noble truths, and that quality of seeing ties into the quality of luminosity one's own inner luminosity, as you become out of kilesa, out of defilement, it has that quality of brightness, of awareness. Like you see the darkness, you know, you can see uh, all the various corners and under the cupboards or whatever. Like you see what's going on everywhere, and that's the quality of luminosity, of brightness. Um, Specifically, when it comes to paying attention in a wise way, and also the not paying attention, or excuse me, well, paying attention in a non-wise way, you could say. So these two very kind of central themes of uh, um, these Pali words are central themes in the sense of you have that which brings you out of the flow of ignorance, out of the flow of unhappiness and dukkha, and into the flow of reality, into the flow of the Dhamma is yoniso manasikara. And the opposite, the ignorant part being ayoniso manasikara. And often you see that theme in, in Pali words is when you have the a, it basically just means like the opposite, like for example, anatta, you have not self, and atta would be self. So it's, when we talk about attention, wise attention, the Buddha says here, what is fit for one's wise attention, what is fit for your own kind of thoughts, like what is worth thinking about or what is not worth thinking about. So when we don't pay attention, we actually basically create the very situation we're trying to get out of. You're creating your own dukkha um, when you're not paying attention. And when you're paying attention, you're actually bringing the freedom from dukkha. And basically, the Buddha says the only thing really worth your time in this life is this: there is dukkha, there is a cause of dukkha, there is the freedom from dukkha, and here is the path from the freedom of dukkha. That's the that's pretty much what is worth your time. And what is not worth your time is trying to figure things out. Especially in this sutta, um, I think around this time in India there was a lot of talk about like the self, like what I am. Am I eternal? Am I not eternal? Am I neither this or that? Am I going to die at the breakup of the body? Will I cease to exist forever? And all these kinds of self-view questions. Do the results of my actions persist? Do they not persist? And all these questions are, the Buddha says, are unwise for one's attention. They are not worth your time trying to figure out. What worth your time is there dukkha? And if there is dukkha, what do I do right now? I think that's so profound. I mean, it's such a liberating way to train the mind. And it really is. It will transform your life incredibly if you keep training yourself into that um, present moment awareness as to what's happening right now. Is this leading me to a whole bunch of dukkha, or is it leading me out of dukkha? Very simple kind of way to think about things. You're either heading towards hell or heaven. You know, and bringing that quality of attention is going to is going to really solve a lot of the problems we have when we go into our heads too much about everything, especially the views of oneself. Um, and also, the Buddha says that one's personality view and one's doubt and one's kind of a sort of adherence to following many rules and observances would be eradicated by the seeing of the Four Noble Truths. But actually, one might say, well, um, how often are you going to be seeing the Four Noble Truths? Depends on how much bhavana or how much mental development you are continually applying. But you might see things very clearly, now, and then in any next moment that might fade away, that might switch, and one might fall back into a state of not being sure, which is being darkened. That luminosity becomes darkened by the fetter of doubt. But when you pay wise attention, you're able to see right through that, and you're able to bring that state of clarity right back into this present moment. So it's really about the development of doing that over and over and over and over, rather than seeing the Four Noble Truths as some kind of one shot permanent occasion where lights show up and there's like a light show uh, around you or something like that, and then you're free and that would be lovely. But actually, in reality, it is more of a continual development of the fulfillment of one's investigation into the Four Noble Truths. And about these six other ways of dealing with the defilements, it's very much based on being the monk at the time. But absolutely, you can apply this to your life, obviously. But around this time, in 2,600 years ago, there was particular like things going on in the at that time that might not be applicable now. So you have to sort of try to keep the spirit and essence of it for our present lives. So the second one is a big one, and I find this one is quite an important one for people, because now we all have phones, and these phones are incredibly distracting and addicting, and it's just a kind of a reality. And so the second one is sense restraint. That these defilements are given up by sense restraint, and this means basically like to be aware of like you might think of like you have like this inner kingdom or this inner castle that you want to keep clean. You want to keep a kind of a beautiful inner kingdom, a luminous mind. You want to keep your mind luminous. You have to be aware of the sensual experience that you go through. We talk about this in a sense of sound, sight, smell, touches, and tastes. The sense restraint is to basically just stay away from that which increases the unarisen defilements to arise. And when they are arisen, how do they increase? Also, um, how do they decrease? And that ties back into that wise attention. Because if you have yoniso manasikara, if you have that perspective developed, you couldn't even approach the wrong things. Like the danger down the road, you wouldn't go down the road. That's that quality of having that development of yoniso manasikara. Now, if you have the stuff come up, if you have the defilement come up, what is it that you do that takes you out of growing and feeding on the defilement and becoming more unhappy? Is restraint. Is actually just taking a hike, like dropping it, walking away. But you want to already have that perspective of being restrained and staying away from um, things that are going to increase defilement. Um, so you think about one's inner castle, and you think about keeping the inner world luminous. You want to be aware of all the gates of one's inner castle. You know, Again, sound, sight, smell, touches, and taste. But you can also just bring it and boil it down to guarding the mind, keeping the mind guarded, like being aware of the danger before things even happen. So you already have that perspective. It's not that you engage in the defilement and hope that like you can just by sheer development alone could be able to pull out of it. The Buddha says no, just stay away from it so that the unarisen defilement doesn't even arise. But if it does arise, just drop it, just walk away. If you see the dukkha, just step out of it. Just put it down or turn your eyes away. It's one of the qualities of the monks who go on bindabat, is to um like you're going on bindabat, for example, and you have this huge line of beautiful Thai women, it would be more skillful to keep your eyes not looking at all the beautiful women, because if you keep doing that, you're gonna keep that kilesas keep gonna grow and grow and grow and grow, and you can take that principle into anything. Really, is to keep the senses off of the growth or feeding of the defilement, because that's what the mind loves to do. It wants to feed and it wants to um, uh, uh, delight in all the deliciousness of sensual experiences. Um, so that quality of sensory strain is very um, powerful and essential part of the practice of the Dhamma. And I also heard recently somebody say that you can practice the Dhamma and play video games at the same time. Now, I wanted to just talk about that very quickly because I come from that culture, that video gaming culture. And we also built a little server that a few guys are even here from called Happy Gamer. So everybody probably has a good sense of experience with video games and how immersive they are, how addicting they are. But when it comes to practicing the Dhamma, we have to understand what we're actually trying to do. And when you're saying, how do you practice the Dhamma, and contradict the teachings of the Buddha at the same time, doesn't make too much sense. But I understand that, for example, um, you are like really stuck in something, like you have a bad habit. Now, it would be much better to instead really criticize yourself and say, "Oh, I shouldn't be doing this. I'm such a bad person," and all these things, and switch those kinds of thoughts into much more gentler, kinder thoughts to shift that direction. But one needs to realize that what you're actually also trying to do is teach yourself the reality of the dissatisfactoriness of sensuality. That to say like you can practice the Dhamma and live a life of sensuality would go against what the Buddha's teachings is the cessation of tanha. That you wouldn't have the experience of suffering and dukkha and then alleviate yourself from the pain and touch of dukkha as the practice of the Dhamma, rather to eradicate the very possibility or liability that you would even have dukkha in the first place. That's the teachings of the Buddha, is complete freedom, complete liberation, total transcendence, not that you get hit by dukkha and then you use the Dhamma as some kind of symptom relief, whereas the Dhamma is a complete cure to the disease overall. So I wonder if anyone has questions about that. That the statement of you can practice the Dhamma and play video games at the same time is not an accurate statement, or just in the overall scope of sense restraint. Because I know people have a lot of questions about how to use your phone and stuff like that. Or does anyone have a question like that? Or will we move on to the next um, method of those 7 methods of uh, overcoming the defilements?
Uh, no, I have nothing to say. I just want to say that's such a great point. Thank you.
Yeah, it would be more in the lane of self-deception, and you have to be honest with yourself about the Buddha's teachings in regards to actually just eradicating tanha. But again, like it's not to be very, uh, it's to recognize things and teach yourself true happiness rather than criticize yourself for your habits. Because criticizing yourself for your habits, it's not gonna, it doesn't work out very well. It's much easier to be kinder and teach yourself through wisdom to let go rather than to punish yourself and be very critical of yourself, because that's generally the habit a lot of people are in, especially from Western culture. Okay, so the next one is actually a lot to do with being a monk. But again, you can take this principle into your life, using the 4 requisites. So, what are the 4 requisites? Is food, shelter, for the monks, it's robes, and the other one is medicine. And again, like the reflection we do is every day is to reflect on the purpose of using these things in our lives. Because once you lose perspective of the purpose, you tend to go along with the flow of, for example, using food for just for the sake of pure pleasure, which is actually very disturbing. I'm trying to find happiness um, through food is very dissatisfying. And to remember that food is just for the purpose of one's spiritual life brings a lot of peace. And you begin to very clearly see the difference between just eating for your body and for a purpose, and then the mind eating. And when the mind eats, it becomes unhappy. When the mind feeds on its greed, it actually is a visceral darkening of that one's inner luminosity, like we mentioned in the beginning. You're actually taking away your happiness by feeding the mind all of its cravings. And so that's the purpose of reflecting on the on the food. And you see many monks, they'll take the bowl and I used to see videos of one of the Thai monks I really like in Thailand, Longta Mahaboa, and you would see him every time before eating his bowl of food, which is the monks eat once a day. He would take the bowl and sort of just stare at it for like good 20 seconds or whatever, just doing that reflection. I eat this not for the beautification of body. I eat this not for uh there's a whole chant to it. It's funny, I know it in Pali, but I don't know it in they're eating not for the pleasure, beautification of the body, and all these other things, just eating for the simple purpose, put an end to dukkha. Because that's what our lives end up becoming more about, pretty much. As you begin to see the true nature of dukkha, all you want to do is end dukkha. That's all your life's about. Because everything else is trying to find happiness, and you realize the end of dukkha is happiness. So you just want to singular focus everything in accordance to this. And so like that would clothes. For the monks, it's just a couple of robes. Now, for people, it's like, well, I buy this nice new Nike shirt from the shop, cost me all this money, and then you see a new Nike shirt pop up in the window of the shop another few months later, and you're thinking, wow, if I wear this, then I look even cooler and more more likable and all these kinds of things that we use clothes for, because we're generally quite attached to our body and we see the body as a tool to satisfy one's desires. We wear things and put on all kinds of things to satisfy desire. When you just wear simple things, um, maybe you carry around two pairs of clothes, a pair of shoes, and every day, you wash one and you dry it, and then you put on the other one, and the next day you swap. You know what I mean? Like you make it nice and simple. For the monks, it's very easy. You throw on the robe, and then you can just wash the robe every few days. It's very, very simple. You hardly remember you even, uh, you hardly even think about these kinds of things anymore. It becomes so habitual. And if there's a hole in your robe, you stitch it up. You don't go and find you don't go shopping for a new robe. If there's a small hole in your robe, you will patch it up. Very simple living, very simple and very peaceful. It really takes us away from this consumer materialistic mindset into just living simply. You know, um, there was a saying I met that came from a monk I met. He said like low living but high thinking. Whereas in the Western culture, it's generally like high living and low thinking. You know, I think that was like, oh yeah, that's actually very true. I agree. uh, and then the next one is lodgings. So this is where you're gonna live, right? The place you live in. This is also another one that builds up a more peaceful, purposeful life. Is how much do you care about where you live, and how fancy does it have to be? How many bedrooms do you need to be happy? And how many bathrooms in your house? Do you need six bathrooms in your house? You know, and so we can just see through all of these uh, um, desires we have, and actually it takes away again, coming back to that inner luminosity. When we care too much about these things that don't really bring us much happiness, having a huge garden and a huge house, then you're going to have maybe two houses and a resort house, still not happy, and a beach house, still not happy, still not good enough, and then a mansion is still not good enough. So bringing down one's way of living, the lodgings they live in, you can live in a nice, simple place, cheap place, where you don't have to work too much, maybe, like a one-bedroom apartment. And then the next stage of that is kind of becoming content with that way of living. Maybe just putting a mattress on the floor, or a yoga mat on the floor. Some monks don't even have a yoga mat, they just sleep on the wood. And it's actually very interesting how some woods are so soft, they're almost as comfortable as a mattress. That's like you would be surprised how used to this simple living you can get. You would be surprised. And the last one is medicine, and I find this one is actually, when I thought about this, I was like, this really ties into one of the precepts that people usually formally take in generally, like in Buddhism, right? You always hear about these five precepts. One of them is not to intoxicate oneself, right? Uh, and also people say like that's the most dangerous one to break, because once you intoxicate yourself, you're more likely to break all the other rules, right? All the other observances. And so, using medicines for the purpose of just like uh, taking away like um, pains or aches in the hold on, let's say, yeah, in the taking away like things that the medicine would work out. Sorry, I have like three different echoes in my ear now.
It's from Dhammarato's and I think like Dhammarato.
It's okay, it's okay. Yeah, like using medicine for the purpose of like just taking away pains that the medicine would work out for. And then you see, like, for example, like this medicine has along with it some painkiller, which is a big issue in our culture, is opiates and using painkillers for pleasure. It's a big problem in our culture. And a lot of medicines have like codeine in them, and then you see that the mind can sort of tend to overtake a lot of medicines, and um, this is obviously not good, right? You get very addicted to opioids. I was extremely addicted to opioids in my early 20s. So you have to be, again, aware of the purpose of things, and then see where the mind starts to try to get in regards to the defilements, how they tend to uh, obscure that purpose, you know, um, um, how the mind tries to work around or beat around that bush, and that's where the defilements are, and that's where we begin to recognize them. So it's really nice to live a nice, simple life. Low living, high thinking. I think that's a really nice way to put it. And does anyone have a question about that? Does anyone want to share with their way of going about life? Does anyone have tries to do that in their life? Like tries to. I think the word is called frugal living in like uh people talk about it anyway, like that, in that sense of frugally living. Does anyone try to do that, or
Um, I have a questions on the where you said the mind beating around the bush. I really like that. Maybe can you talk about that a bit more? I mean, later, I guess.
no? It's okay. It's a good question, because it's like when you have a purpose to do something, and then where is it that the defilements start to arise? That's where you want to put that attention. So it's like when you're taking the medicine, for example, and the medicine comes along with it some like painkiller stuff in it or whatever, then you can see, ooh, then you can see that kind of like that kind of lustful excitement to experience something from the painkillers, the effects of the opioid, rather than losing out on the side of the purpose of the medicine. Same with food. I think food is the most obvious one, right? When you're eating, where is it that the mind starts to feed? Where is it that the mind starts to eat? That's where one's sati needs to be and attention needs to be. Because once the mind starts to eat, um, dissatisfaction comes in naturally because now it becomes um, rooted in sensuality. Um, the arisen defilement starts to grow. So that's when one has ayoniso manasikara, that unwise attention, and now you're going in the flow of the defilement, and it begins to grow, rather than just eating for the purpose of eating. So it's all about having that sati and awareness around the purpose of things. And when that purpose is contradicted, you have to be aware of that. That's all. So you stay out of dukkha.
Uh, for me, the contradiction happens a lot, and uh, yeah, you were talking about the frugal living, and yeah, that's definitely it, right? Like when you live a simple life, the contradiction lessens a lot.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. You actually like do that. You actually live that life,
Mm.
and then see the mind grasping at it. This is not good enough. This is not good enough. And then you let that settle down, and it is good enough. You can be happy with a really simple life, and it feels better. Like this is the end of dukkha. It feels better not to have that grasping mind, to be content with with a very simple living, which ties into you don't have to make so much money. You don't have to work two jobs. You don't have to stress out all the time about a whole bunch of things because you're satisfied with not much. You know.
For a cat, so I really like that point you made about kind of we can get the medication, but then we start thinking like, oh, they gave me a good one. It's I
Yeah.
really recognized myself when I was younger with that too, and then with food as well. Like I don't know, maybe you get invited out to a dinner with your family or something, and it's like you're just eating to nourish the body, but then it's like, oh, this is a nice restaurant, and your brain starts, oh, this steak looks really good. Like, how do you kind of suggest we approach things from that once that comes up? Because it's like we're still going to eat the food or we're still going to take the medicine,
Yeah.
but like how to not be kind of like enchanted by it, I guess.
Yeah, that's the whole practice right there. The whole practice of the Dhammas is to see the dukkha. See the dukkha right there on the spot when the mind starts to go towards sensuality because it's dukkha.
Mm.
But we think in those moments when the mind starts to leap at its greed and all of it starts to become very passionate towards sensuality, that's where the dukkha starts to begin and it only gets worse. Factually, sensuality is dukkha.
Mm.
So that's the whole practice is to see that. And I would just say try to stay out of all the situations,
Yeah, yeah.
and, and don't delight in it. That's the quality. Don't delight in it.
Mm.
Now, what does that mean? Does that mean you lose pleasure? No. It's just that you see that happiness through finding happiness through sensuality is not the way to go. It never has been the way.
Right.
So you don't delight in it. You delight in the Dhamma.
I really like this point you made as well about y- how we can like play video games or something, but then be like, oh, it's okay. Like the dukkha that comes up from that, I'll just use these dharma techniques to get rid of it. No worries. But then it's like you're kind of
Hmm.
like your eye is not on the prize. You're kind of like still engaging in it, but you're like, I'll get rid of the dukkha later. Like it's okay. Like, and it's kind of
Yes,
like, yeah, it's like giving up. What do they say? Like giving up lesser happiness for a greater happiness.
exactly. Yeah. You're really missing out on how beautiful and amazing that luminous mind that is not darkened by kilesa is. Really missing out on it. That's why the Buddha really he called sensuality ignoble, gross, and for ordinary run of the mill people. I mean, he doesn't teach the Dhamma for you to lose happiness. He's teaching
Mm.
the highest levels of happiness that can be experienced by a human. And I think that's what everybody wants, right? So you just have to recognize that this is the nature of the mind. The nature of the mind is to um, increase in defilements when there is ignorance, when you're not being aware of the Dhamma. You're just going with the flow of nature, so to say, of ignorant nature.
Mm.
And all these things come about, all of these thoughts, which are just the defilements, start to come up. It's just defilements, you know. And so you're saying, and that ties into what you're saying. Oh, I'll just put up with it.
Mm.
Actually, ties into the next method the Buddha gives, which is enduring.
Cathal.
Enduring, which is very interesting because, first of all, I think it really ties into the first. There's a simile the Buddha gives about like having arrows, you know, like being hit by arrows. The first arrow is like the inevitable experience of sound, sight, smell, touches, and tastes, and the various feeling tones they have. But the second arrow comes from avita, of not understanding the Four Noble Truths. That's why we have, that's why we uh, create more dukkha for ourselves, is not understanding the Four Noble Truths. And so that ties into what you're saying. Oh, I'll just put up with this dukkha, and then later on I'll get rid of it. That's the power of defilement right there. It draws you into it through kind of like creating it's what I call it's the excuse fabricating factory. You know, it has a sort of an excuse to justify keep going into the defilement. But with wisdom, you begin to see through that. When you pay wise attention, you begin to uh, come out of that defilement and right back into the luminous nature of the mind, right back into letting the defilement settle down and to become continually aware that the mind is already by in and of itself self-satisfactory, and it becomes dissatisfied when it searches outwards into the world for happiness and satisfaction. So sensuality is a factually painful dukkha experience, but we are so used to it that we really believe that this is where happiness lies, and we feel
Can I
pain
say something?
separate. Yeah, go ahead.
Today I was reading a sutta, and that was also about sense restraints. When I read the suttas like that, and when I hear you and some other monks talking about sense restraints, I understand it. I understand why. I mean, for example, the example that you just gave with playing games, I totally see that. But then how I see it is like Dhamma is not free. We pay a price for Dhamma, and the price that we pay is literally the life that we know it as our life.
Yeah.
So I'm giving up basically my whole life for Dhamma. If I would practice Dhamma, let's say correctly, which at the moment I don't do because I don't do sense restraint like really strictly. But if I would do that, it means I will need to give up my life. And I'm not sure at the moment, or that even for most of us here right now, if we truly are honest, if that would be even practical or even I don't know.
Well, you might
Well,
say that you could just give up that an unwholesome thought, like I have to give up my whole life right now. That's a very unwholesome thought, you know. Instead, of you could
Well,
just be
let's say
like,
for someone who gaming, we have here friends who are gamers. For them, gaming is their life. Say not give up gaming, give up sex, give up
Cathal.
relationship, give up food, give up this, give up that. Well, what remains?
Uh, if I
The
could,
question that I had was connected with what Carwan is saying, if I may ask.
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, you mentioned you struggle with addiction to opiates. You mentioned maybe other drugs. You've been a gamer, and now you have been a monk for several years. And I listened to the way you speak of sensuality, and it's clear that you see that sensuality, you don't see it as valuable, you don't see it as pleasurable, you don't see it as a source of happiness, you see it as dukkha in the way that the Buddha teaches it. But like Karwan is saying, most people aren't able to see sensuality as dukkha. They see it as the only source of happiness. So I was wondering if you can share with the group um, exactly what and when you shifted from seeing sensuality as a source of pleasure and happiness to seeing it as nothing but dukkha and seeing the joy in renouncing.
Yeah, that's exactly the the point. Is that um, one may feel like, oh, I have to give all of this up at one time, and that's too that just doesn't really work out very well. Like trying to do it all at one time. We have to approach this in a very practical way, you know. Um, it's more of like a leaning out, and the leaning out comes through wisdom, but it's the wisdom to first begin to see the fact that, oh, this doesn't make me happy, and then you start to put the source of, well, if this doesn't make me happy, I need to turn away from this. But seeing the fact that I'm so attached to it, something extra needs to be done here. So I need to investigate this, you know. And so I need to see the with truly understanding how this works, that I may be able to turn away. Ultimately, you want to turn away like 180 from it, 180 degrees, like completely be free of it because it feels the best. And we use sensuality to feel good, right? We we want to come back to that inner luminosity, that pure mind that is so self-satisfying, that doesn't need anything to feel good. It's already complete. It's already whole. So keeping that in perspective, that it's like turning out from trying to find happiness from the world doesn't mean you're like going to lose out. It's a joyful process, like you are happy to do it. But but
I'm wondering, Cathal, I'm wondering if you could share if you remember when hearing that sensuality was unsatisfying, um, shifted from just hearing it from people who understood that to you yourself seeing sensuality as dangerous, as unsatisfying, and seeing happiness in abstaining from sensuality. Do you remember exactly what it was or when it was that your view changed, and that you understood the happiness of renouncing sensuality? As Karwan was saying, many people feel like they're giving up their entire life in
I
in
think
sense
people have a
restraint
black
and in
and white
sensuality.
perspective of it. I think people have a black and white perspective of giving up sensuality, but it's more of the process. Like I said, you ultimately you want to be like completely turned away from it as you begin to see in any form that addiction does not feel good. Like if pleasure was the way to happiness, then we would all be quite satisfied addicts, like but it's not, and that begins as a sort of a process of turning away and
Can I?
enjoying the peace of one's own mind that is not so affected by craving. So it's not a black and white thing. I couldn't really put a point in time like where it was like that. It doesn't make sense to me. It's still a much more gradual process of turning away from it. But that turning away almost perfectly correlates with the satisfaction of being at peace from craving. And I think a lot of that has to do with restraint and just living in a monk's life. For me personally, is that peace is so much more enjoyable,
Hmm.
that you begin to stop leaping at craving and sensuality for happiness. It's
So
almost
you
like you
would say
start
it was
leaping
adopting
at
sense restraint
peace.
then.
Wait, say that again, sorry?
So you would say it was moving into a life of restraint that that gradually wore away your infatuation with sensuality. Is that what you would say?
Yeah, it's moving towards it because you know that's the way. So you just follow that. Um, follow that wisdom, you know, you follow it and you get to see for yourself, like you will experience the settling down of the craving. Oh, this feels so much better. And then you keep coming back to that peacefulness from craving. It's a real experience. I really, really like that. And that leaping, that you know, like that really like delighting, indulging part of the craving is like very like, oh, I don't want nothing to do with that, you know, because you see how it doesn't. It's just it's very deceptive. It's not quite. It's not going to bring you um, much happiness. You know you get that hit of the experience, but you see right through the fading nature of it. You know, you see right through that it does fade away very quickly. It doesn't fulfill you. And
Can
again,
I
I think
say
this.
something?
Yeah,
Is that
go ahead.
okay?
Yeah, yeah.
So it's what I'm hearing is you start to, as a process, see the dangers of sensuality. But when you say also luminous mind, are you also experiencing that? So therefore, and that feels good. So therefore, you don't want the coarseness of sensuality, because it for me, it's a bit of faith. So I'm hearing this, and so there's an element of having faith that that is where it leads to. And then I wonder if some people are experiencing this luminous mind, is which then makes the process quicker, because then you see see the opposite, which would be the dangers.
It is absolutely true. The less defilement is there, that does darken that luminosity in that sense, um, is a real experience. You know, and it's I don't know, I
Sorry.
don't think it's like this black and white like switch on the wall
Hmm.
where it's like suddenly the whole light's on and then suddenly it's off. But the darkening from the defilements is definitely a process as you begin to throw out, let's say, an unwholesome thoughts, unwholesome thoughts. Um, you do begin to experience more peace, and that grows. So you begin to shift from the darkening nature of defilement into the practice of the Dhamma. Like you actually love the practice of the Dhamma just as much as people just beginning Dhamma practice love the nature of defilements. Like in the sense of like they still really perceive happiness through defilements. Like there really does seem to be like this craving propulsing nature towards craving. It feels so real, and it's like, and then you experience whatever you get out of the craving, and it's dukkha. It fades away. It doesn't last very long. Um, and then coming out of that, seeing that and coming out of that into the Dhamma, you begin to stop going down with the flow of craving into just seeing through it, you know, and letting that craving settle down. And that settling down is the luminosity of the mind shining. Like you don't find luminosity, it's already there. And quite often you do hear in Dhammarato's talks saying you're already okay. And I really find that's for me what he's pointing at is like you're already fine, you're already like you already have what you're trying to find. And quite often points at the nature of our Western mind as very goal oriented, is trying to find luminosity, like trying to attain luminosity, when the practice is to just drop these unwholesome thoughts one after another, including uh, the thoughts of like uh, uh, in regards to sensuality, that like that's too, I'm going to miss out on happiness or something like that, you know, if I do that, which does require an element of faith, I suppose. Yeah. But that faith, it quickly turns into confidence. That's, I think, the quality of that is like faith becomes confidence um, through experiencing like that's actually true. And then the faith is no longer like this shaky, oh, not sure, and it becomes a living experience. Um, um, so as long as yeah, I guess you just sort of just go through it and see for yourself, like the Buddha said, like this is something we have to see for ourselves. Um, hope that answered that question.
Thank you.
And
And Kat,
Yeah,
What I want to say is, some things, I mean, they are easily seen to be unwholesome. Okay, and it is good to have
I
some
somehow.
restraint about them. But if you truly look at it, if you really look at it from the sutras, what say, okay, we have six senses, and everything that contact those six senses are coming to us from the senses. So if we truly restrain all the six senses,
Yes,
it means
yes, yes, yes.
also
Yeah,
every
I just want to
idea
say,
that we have.
I know what you're trying to say, but I have to say that the way of looking at it like that, black, like you go from one day to the next, but this is what it says in the sutras, I'm going to go from this to that, never works out for anyone that is highly idealistic. I'm just saying, like in regards to what you're saying now, like if you want to practice exactly in accordance with the suttas, that's where you want to get to. But you have to look at where you're at. That's finding one's middle way right now. So your middle way may not be jumping from like a life of like complete indulgence and sensuality and like a forest from one day to the next. No, it's like a middle way process. Maybe you want to, visit a forest one day and go back, and then maybe, oh yeah, I really like that, and go back again, and you know, it's a that kind of process. Seeing for yourself, this is the way, middle way, not the black and white way.
Yeah,
I hope
because
that
how
I'm
I
just
think is, for me, then I'm look at that, especially in the mindset, the scene, this mind as a sense. That means every thought that I have, every idea that I have, every concept that I have in my mind, they are all. I should basically block all those, and that becomes like, okay, yeah, this is like this is like too
yeah.
much. Uh,
Exactly. I mean, it feels too much. It's too much pressure. So one needs to find their middle way. And your middle way and my middle way, and Ajahn, who's been a monk for 20 years, with, it has a different middle way, you know. But ultimately, there is a middle way, and that middle way is going to be discerned through practice. So the black and white thinking, I have never seen it work for anyone. And I always use this like I don't know if to call it similar or whatever, but like you think about when those guys who make clay pots, they make clay pots and then they put it out in the sun, and leave it out in the sun. Um, there's a middle way, so to say, of curing it, where you leave it out in the sun a little bit and then put it back in the shade. But if you leave it out in the sun too long, anything cracks it. Any little thing can crack the pot because has not been correctly developed. Let's say. It hasn't gone through the right step by step process. I hope that makes some sense.
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah,
Yeah, well, we'll keep practicing, keep studying, keep looking at it. Yeah.
yeah, it's not a black and white thing, it really isn't. Because I think many people come into the Dhamma with that perspective of like trying to do things from one day to the next. Too much. It's too much on the mind. It's too much pressure on the mind. Uh, just enough pressure, just enough. That's the whole quality of enough. Um, um, doing what works, basically. Okay. So also, in part of that Sabasava Sutta, when the Buddha says to endure, he really talks about the first arrow being like certain elements like cold and heat, but he also talks about like criticism, harsh speech. I was like, oh yeah, like actually, if you think about speech, it's just the wind element, like when people are criticized and whatever. Uh, if you think about it, that's just like the wind element, and whatever we make out of that is our second element. So whatever story we make up of the the experience of sound, sight, smell, touches, and taste, and various thoughts passing through the mind, whatever we make up of that is our doing. You know, I think that's such a profound way of thinking about like um, enduring in the sense of yes, there are things that you just sort of like you're gonna have to like put up with sometimes, like maybe your umbrella, uh like like flew away, and then you're going to have to deal with all of the rain, and it's like, oh, and then that's the time to just accept it, you know. But also enduring has this weird quality of putting up with, and I find that sometimes people think they need to put up with a lot of dukkha when actually you could make a change. Most of the time you can make a change, but there's some belief system we hold on to. Oh, I can't make a change. I'm not able to do that, or I'm not allowed to do that. And that's where we actually can make a change, you know. So a lot of stuff I think we put up with when we can make a change, but that part of the restraining of that the defilements come from just accepting sometimes things are just like that. Sometimes there are flies around, some mosquitoes around, and maybe the easy way out is just go and take the blood out of me and go away, you know, instead of just getting all annoyed and frustrated and irritated. It's just take the blood and go away from me, you know. And I'm sure there's a lot of things like that. Like sometimes, like our parents or loved ones, maybe in a particular way, sometimes you just have to accept it. That's the easy way out. Actually, is just accept it, the situation. You know you can't make a change, but most of the time, I mean, on the inner world, we can always make a change to everything. Um, and the last one is removing the defilement. So this is a really interesting one. Removing the defilement. And I think that really ties into the quality of the right noble effort to actually remove the kilesa in that is obscuring the mind. Like I'll keep tying it back into that first little saying of the Buddha, the mind is already luminous but darkened by defilement. So when particular defilements arise, one can remove them. It's very liberating to know you can do that. And when you do that, it's like, whoa, I can do that. I can actually just like uh, shift the mind um, just like that. It's actually incredibly liberating to know you can actually you don't have to put up with a lot of stuff. Um, and the last one is development. And this is one of the most interesting words I, I have found. Like when people talk about samadhi and meditation and bhavana, I think what many people describe meditation as, actually think they're probably saying bhavana, which generally is translated as like mind development or mental development, where meditation is actually like more on particular themes um, and aspects of things, whereas developing the mind is a different thing. And the Buddha says here the 7 factors of awakening, the sati, and and developing means that one has a great potential. One has a Buddha potential. Everybody has this unbelievable potential, but generally it's not really realized because people don't develop it. But knowing you can develop, you have an unbelievable potential is wonderful, you know. And you say you have one of them is sati, and then we have the energy, which comes from the right noble effort, really. You know, if you continually put in the effort, it becomes energetic. It becomes a ball in motion, like a ball that goes on. Initially, it's a little bit uh, uncomfortable to push the ball, but once it starts rolling, whoa, it's easy. It's fun. I love doing this. I love practicing the Dhamma. But in the beginning, it's like, oh, I don't really, you know, there's that quality of effort until it becomes in regards to the awakening factor of virya, of energy. And then the arising of the piti that comes when the hindrances are starting to diminish, uh, ties into that luminous mind opening up. You have joy, you have real joy in the mind, um, seeing the results in motion and action. And that ties into seeing that sort of fade away too over time. You see, it's actually, it starts to fade over time, but there's great satisfaction that you could come out of all that dukkha. There's this tranquility, this stillness that is just so wonderful. Like, it's like this, the mind settles down and so beautiful, you know, because quality of beauty is like the the glitters of the sun and the sounds of birds, and the present moment is a very vibrant, peaceful experience. Well, vibrant and peaceful, it sounds, well, same kind of thing. I don't know how to say it. Like alive, very alive, but peaceful, you know, very peaceful and wonderful. And then samadhi. Now, samadhi, I really like the translation immersion because um, I think people generally translate samadhi as like being very concentrated. And actually, like if you get extremely concentrated into something like the breath, like you really go into the breath to the point where you're like, it's like you're going down a tunnel. You are immersed into that particular thing, whatever object or whatever you want to call it. Like you get very immersed into it, same like a mantra or something. Like you can totally get lost in it. But um, the samadhi is more like immersion into the present moment. So tying back to that quality of the luminous mind has that uh, uh, sort of connotation of very vast and open awareness, you know, like very open and present, not super sucked into one thing, um, which also ties into the reality of that actually suppresses the defilements. So it's not the right samadhi. It's not samma samadhi. It's a different kind of samadhi, and this pushes the defilements down. And then when you come out of that, you go straight back down in defilements and hindrances, and it's like, well, okay, that's definitely not liberating. I think this is one of the first things the Buddha realized, uh, is that these kinds of practices are not the way to liberation. And then you have this equanimity, and actually there's a lot of elaboration on this quality of equanimity. But honestly, I feel a bit muddled here. I don't want to go into that. And then there's a seventh. Unless someone wants to comment on it, I invite someone to comment on that quality of the equanimity in the seven factors if anyone wants to add to that. I sort of feel muddled up in my head about it, to be honest. And then the seventh one is investigation. Actually, I think that was like usually in that order of things. It's actually the second one. It's not the seventh one, but second one, which is the constant here now, seeing the Four Noble Truths. Is this dukkha? Like the investigation is present. You're seeing how this law of reality works in the sense of dependent origination. You're seeing it work in motion, looking at it how it works, um, um, and that takes you out of any kind of dukkha. Really, constant investigation, and seeing how things work. Um, will constantly transform the chitta, keep it bright, keep it out of defilements, because you're seeing, wait, if I don't see things clearly, I end up in dukkha. If I don't have the right way of looking at things, I somehow perceive things, like I somehow see a lot of happiness in things that don't bring me much happiness. I somehow see things as lasting, therefore I crave a lot, but actually it doesn't last very long. And I see, um, perhaps I see myself as something very important and something with an important future, and I coming from the past and this strong sense of self view, and so yeah, like the the qualities of the seven factors are brought up to their fulfillment. So you might say, like in the beginning, it's like remitting, or it's sort of on and off. Sometimes you have sati, sometimes you don't have sati, sometimes you have a little bit of energy, a little bit of joy, and then it goes off. But as that practice begins to develop, which is the uh, translation of bhavana, then it gets much more unremitting. Well, unremitting means it doesn't turn off, but like it's not a black and white thing, it's like a gray scale, or it gets darker, or more luminous, it gets brighter, it goes from dark to bright. Um, so yeah, that's the seven ways of restraining or dealing with the defilements. And just on that last one of bhavana, is I think that it seems to be in our culture that there is a belief that everything can be overcome just by bhavana alone, and all these other factors you don't need to look at. Just by bhavana alone, you can completely eradicate the defilements. And here the Buddha says that's not true. And so one needs to like look at their life as the Dhamma, in the sense of like what we said about, it might be nice to be like low living and high thinking, like begin to see a simple life that brings about a greater development of the mind. And so you begin to look at all the aspects of your life. And I actually missed out on one called avoiding. I'm sorry, I missed out on one called avoiding. And I was just about to say avoiding bad people. So that I mentioned 6, and this is one of the 7th one is avoiding. And here's the thing is about this one is in the suttas, it's all about, like elephants and tigers and cesspools. And I don't really see any of that around nowadays. So you might say, well, what should I just straight up avoid? What should I just avoid? I don't know if anyone can add to this, but I was thinking like raves. I think raves you should avoid raving, or concerts, or like um football matches in England where everyone just beats each other to death. Just avoid these, you know. Um, but generally, we don't live in a time where there are actual like real dangers to tigers and elephants and stuff like that, and there are sewage or a big pit holes in the ground, But also it ties into avoiding bad people, and bad really means like just not in the sense like there are evil people, but like in the sense of like there are people that are going to drag you into their stuff, uh, energy vampires or
Yeah,
something like
exactly. I see it kind of as just like, even if it's not a literal cesspit, like just avoiding stuff that we know is gonna get us into trouble and hurt us. Like stuff that is just so obviously gonna cause us problems,
Yeah, that's actually
Like
if
if
you
someone's
think about it as a
angry, if someone's super angry and yelling and ranting and raving, like there's no point in, getting like tangled up in that. Like it's just like a
yeah,
hopeless endeavor.
yeah, that's a skillful thing I see some monks do. Like they're not going to argue with each other. Actually, they just walk away. I was like, that's a very skillful thing to do. You know, there's just I very little see any argument when there's something goes wrong. It's just walk away, cool off. You know, that's such a skillful way to do things. Just avoid it. Just stay away from it. You don't have to endure it. You know, you, you don't have to put up with these things. You could just avoid them. So there's such skillful things to do. Such a way of inviting creativity and investigation into removing the defilements. And you see the grand picture of tanha. You see the grand picture of craving in your whole life, and you really see the less tanha you have, the happier you are. And this brings you deeper and deeper and deeper into the Dhamma. It's not such a like a um intellectual thing, you know what I mean? Like it's really like I feel happier, less tanha I have, and so you get pulled into the Dhamma. It becomes something you love. You love to overcome your whatever hinders you. You love to overcome the darkness in one's heart. We love to do this, and so it comes naturally, very naturally. Um, and and yeah, just to quickly mention that bhavana thing about, I find we often try to overcome everything through just mental development, in the sense of like those 7 factors. When you actually have a really nice, skillful way to do things. Um, um, it's like like many problems, but one tool being the bhavana. Whereas actually you can carry around a tool belt. When this happens, do this. When that happens, do that. Take out this tool. You know what I mean? I think this sutta is such a practical sutta. Is really one of the best. For me personally, one of the best suttas to look into. And and yeah, so that all actually came from our friend Eunice. We had a quick chat about practice, mentioning that again we look back to the past, trying to relive the past, in the sense of we look for the objects of our past and try to relive it, try to capture joy through means of the world, and we actually forget this state of mind the state of the mind that it was in, like especially childhood. Like children don't have that super darkening kilesa as you do as people get older, but like so they're very joyful. But people try to look back to the past and relive it as if that same experience is going to be the exact one you have now, rather than looking at the real issue of the mind's the state of mind, which as it becomes more as you let your luminosity come out from you, as you allow it to come out and you let go of the defilements, you come out of defilements. Uh, those same that same joy is present. You know, it's not something in the past. You don't have to look to the past. It's in the present moment, like you know. So yeah, I mean that was what I was planning on talking about today. Majjhima Nikaya number 2, Sabasava Sutta, and that little saying the Buddha gave in the Anguttara Nikaya is about the luminous mind, and it is darkened by defilements. So the Buddha says you're already okay, and what one needs to do is remove the impurities in the heart uh, through practicing the Dhamma. So okay, that was what I wanted to mention. And so there's a couple of questions in the chat, in the live, what is it called again? Going live chat from, let's see, from Ivan. Discipline and time management. As a monk deep in the forest, I'm not that deep in the forest, just up on, if I was that deep in the forest, I wouldn't have this connection right now. We are not too far from the coastline of Pattaya and Chambari, Wat Yan, but it is about half an hour walk down to like civil life. It's very secluded, but it's not that far away. But how do you view it now? Time management, discipline. Um, it's definitely important. Actually, I remember the very first time I went to a Wat, I was complaining so much about having nothing to do. You know, I couldn't handle it. Like I was just so restless, and I would call Dhammarato about this. And the first thing he actually mentioned is to manage your time. Like I said, like we mentioned today, like I was coming from it from this black and white perspective of things should be like this, you know, and in reality, it's not like that. It had to be developed continually, developed, and that structure definitely helps. It really does help um, to set yourself up that structure and see can you stick to it. Keep coming back to it. You know, if you can't stick to it, come back to it. If it's helping you, like practice. And I think meditation timers and stuff like that are useful. For me now, it's just a lot less of a structure. The only thing I do is, I mean, besides like what we do as monks is go on bindabat in the morning, clean up together. It's called core what. We all clean the monastery together. Most of the monks stay around, have a little chat, whatever, and then we go back to our kutis. Um, some monks just go straight to the kutis. You have a lot of freedom as a monk. Like you don't have to do anything. You just do whatever you want to do. Some monks go straight back. They're very disciplined, and that's it. Like you're very consistent with their own way of doing things. And sometimes it's like, yeah, you stick to structure, and then something changes, and then you fall into another structure. Um, and then like 4 o'clock, there's some sweeping, and so that's about as much structure as there is. And the rest is ideally for bhavana and then a little bit of studying Thai. Um, I find like past the evening time is a really nicest time for just meditation. But sometimes like old habits come back up. I'll be honest, like my old habits come back up. Um, but it's really nice to see the progress on that. I won't be an ideal person and say things like I have like broken through things like from one day or from these 2 years as a monk, but definitely a lot of good progress. And it really feels much nicer to be lighter, you know, in regards to like having to stick to a structure and actually coming out of the restlessness, especially, and just being able to like walk around and cleaning and getting up and like walking back and forwards and sitting. There's not much of a stuff coming up. It's just kind of a seamless um way of practicing. But some structure's nice. Yeah, some structure's nice.
I was
Discipline, I guess. Yeah, go ahead.
I was yeah, I really want to hear what you say about discipline, but just real quick, like when you talk about structure and you mentioned about frugal life just now, a thought that come out was like a structure of frugal life. Although I don't know what that means, I'm gonna look into it. Yeah, that's all I want to say.
Well, that's the thing. Like we have to look. We have to always remember wisdom. You know what I mean? Like you have the structure, but why? Why do we need structure? You have to look at the why. That's really where the real causes, the real issues. Like, what is the thought that takes you away from the structure? You know what I mean? It's just an unwholesome thought. It's like I don't want to do this. I don't. I'll do this later. You know what I mean? Like that's where we want to
Yeah.
see the dukkha and not just use the structure as a means to an end or just discipline ourselves for the rest of our lives. Like my father would usually like at 100% not drink alcohol until 12 o'clock. He was very disciplined about that, very consistent. You know, I was able to stick to that for many years. I mean, you know, it's not liberating for him. It was not liberating. He wanted to make a change, but the best he could do is just constantly stick to structure, uh, like that kind of like discipline. But again, we want to understand it's about liberation. But again, it's like yeah, it's definitely like a way to bring about liberation. I think a lot of people are scared of that structure and stuff because they see it as strictness and they see it as tightness and that quality of like uh being confined. But actually, it's you could think about it in the sense of training and freedom instead. You're training yourself in freedom. Um, I hope that makes sense. Like instead of just
Yeah.
doing it for the sake of trying to like achieve
I
some
think I think
perfect system
I think
or
that's
something.
the going back to the Yoniso Manisakara, the wise attention, which and the opposite, unwise attention. I see over here, when there's no wise attention, it seems like I just discipline for the sake of discipline, and it just doesn't feel liberating, like you said. So yeah, thank you. It clicks for me. I'm gonna keep paying attention to that. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, I hope that answers it fairly well. I think that's all right. And so Michael asks, and may be awake for this one. Is Michael here today? I think he is, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can by me.
Okay, cool, cool. I'd love to hear about any changes in views or values monastic life has had on you. Um, oh yeah, really. I think like I think monastic life is really nice. I I think I was a little bit scared of it and like I didn't wa- I was really resistant of it. Now I really do what I just said, like training and freedom. In the beginning, you have this really a lot of aversion. Like it's like you don't want to. It's like I don't want to. I don't want to do this every day. I'm out here, you know. But over time, it really just becomes obvious. Like this is so wonderful to feel light in yourself and to be peaceful. I don't know. I think it just grows in great value. Like this is really priceless kind of. The Dhamma is so priceless. I can't really say it other than that. It's so priceless. But I think it takes some time. I think that the element of time is the most important one. To just try to keep up with it, you know, and see over time this really does work. And monastic life is definitely a nice way to do it. I think you can do it if
If you,
you're very smart. You can do it without like you can get very far without monastic life. I mean, I think if you're very smart, you can do it like that. I think if you're not so smart,
practical,
monastic life is
this is connected to what I was saying before, but it's very clear to me that you have so much like joy in the Dhamma, so much joy in the sobriety that monastic life has brought you, so much joy in having this, realizing this luminous mind, free of defilement, maybe not completely free, but largely free. But you know that there was a point in your life where, playing video games or using substances or pursuing relationships or any form of sensuality meant so much to you that the idea of living a life as frugal as you put it, simple, that you're living now would have scared you, like Harwan was talking about, this fear of in order to gain the fruits of the Dhamma, we have to sacrifice our entire life.
Yeah,
So I guess where I'm getting at is what would Phra Cathal now, who loves the Dhamma and sees sensuality as just dukkha, tell Tal, who was addicted to substances, video games, ideas, relationships? What would you say to that Cattell now? What advice would you give him to help him understand um, what the Dhamma is leading him to?
oh, I would have just beat him up. I would have said stop doing. I mean, I was so stuck in my head about it, you know. Like I have a bad habit of being really stubborn about what I'm gonna do, you know. So I would have just been like, "Come on, man," you know. I don't think there's anything I could have
Would that
said
have
that
worked
he like
though?
advice. Huh?
Would that have worked?
I think it depends on what stage I was at. Like, I mean, I really, really went down into the hedonistic way of trying to achieve happiness to the point I
Hmm.
really harm myself sometimes. Like, I really harm myself a lot. So I think, like,
And would you say that your idea of happiness when you were engaging in hedonism is the happiness that you gained from the Dhamma, or would you say that you had to sacrifice that idea of happiness in order to understand the happiness that you have now?
I don't think it ever felt like a sacrifice. The, I think the only there were times where it just felt really like um especially when I was ordaining, it really felt like there was like a knife in me. You know what I mean? It's so scary to do it, but I did never felt like I was losing out on something
Hmm.
for sure. And a lot of it actually had to do with Dhammarato's like constantly like coming back to Dhammarato for some like guidance. You know what I mean? And
Hmm.
just the qualities of the ajahns and the spiritual friends really like I think without that I would be so stuck in my way of doing things like uh but I never ever felt like I was ever like giving up something, absolutely not, no.
Hmm.
And yeah,
So nothing to be afraid of then.
yeah, there's not, I mean, there's nothing to be afraid of. I think the
All
scariest
you're
thing,
giving up, all people are giving up, is just suffering.
yeah, and there is fear there for sure, right? Like the fear is there, but like I think you just continually see like this is something that like is 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 not, you don't have to live it like by this. Like this doesn't rule your life, you know? Like this is something that is part of it all. And you just you sort of see through the fear of whatever you're gonna miss out on or something. Like it's just like it's just
Oh.
part of the sense of like your attachment and the separation from that um fear of the separation, but you're going to be separated anyway. It's easier to just
Hmm.
let go, you know? It's so easy to let go. But funny enough, my relationships with my friends and all these things have been the best they ever have been without
Hmm.
that sense of like, that I'm going to lose something. Like people come and go and what so much. It's so easier for me to make friends with someone like, or something like that. Um, knowing they're going rather than like getting super attached and then worrying that they're going to leave or something. You know what I mean? It's more of a sharing
Hmm.
experience rather than a latching on and building the fear of. But there's fear, I think, there as the residue of attachment for sure.
Hmm.
I mean, it's just there, especially with like the body and stuff like that. But I think these things with time are gonna I get, go in the same lane as all that previous practice goes, as diminishing, eroding away, fading away into not coming up anymore.
Hmm.
Whatever, whenever that happens, it's gonna happen, I guess. Um,
Well,
I hope that
for me, it's
answers
been
that.
very, very enjoyable and delightful to listen to the effect that living the monastic life and being around other monastics, Thai monastics, has had on you. It's been very delightful to listen to. I really enjoyed your talk.
Yeah, thank you for the good question. I hope there's more questions or anyone has wants to ask questions about monk life, because there never is any questions about monk life. So many young men, so many monks, potential monks. Anybody want to be a monk? No?
I'm kind of thinking about it, but do you think doing a retreat is a good kind of test for it? Not test, but like a trial period. I don't know. Or do you think that a retreat wouldn't really accurately kind of like give the impression? I mean, I don't know. Like, do people usually just go ordain right away, like Westerners, or is it more like you kind of first try things out, or how does that kind
Well,
of look?
well, in Thailand, like a lot of people ordain for all kinds of reasons, but generally Westerners come into the ordination because they just want to practice more Dhamma, like they really liked it,
Mm.
you know.
Right, right.
And so if you have like a retreat, it might help you see your potential, like in the sense of like, oh wow, like my mind is so cleared out. Like if I could, like, if when your mind is really cleared out from a meditation retreat, it's really easy to see the dukkha
Mm.
in life. And so we do want to aim ourselves at liberation from this dukkha. And so it might be helpful. I'm not sure. A lot of people talk negatively about retreats.
Yeah,
I don't know. I think you'll figure it out.
yeah,
Might
yeah.
be experience.
Can you
Which is
speak
your
just a little
mindset?
bit more about what you just said? You said it becomes really easy to see the dukkha in life. Can you be more specific about that?
Well, it becomes more clear, as the mind is more settled down, making it easy to see the dukkha. You see like the whole, it really looks like a massive dukkha, and the clearer the mind is, the more obvious the dukkha is. But when the mind gets muddled up and is in the churning or the swarming of all the tanha and all the craving, it's very hard to see it. I think that ties into the quality of the practice of calming the mind.
Hmm.
Um, is really essential to the practice, and then but also like you really want to do it in the investigation, to see like actually like you just want to turn away from any kind of attachment because it just changes. Like even in really nice states of mind, they're just changing. So even like when the mind is settled down and you do see the dukkha, you also want to see the dukkha in like those states too, and that's
And
part of the investigation.
before the mind cleared up, what did that dukkha look like?
You mean like,
Before you saw it as dukkha, the specific phenomena or the specific aspects of life that you're saying now is dukkha, what did it look like before the mind cleared up?
I mean, it just looked like uh this feels like I can never. Yeah, it just feels like stuck. You feel stuck with I cannot find happiness like this. You feel stuck something. I like the word perilous. I think that's a great word to talk about dukkha. You feel like no matter what you try to do, your way of doing it does not work. I think it ties into having some like sense of like, all right, I'm clearly doing something wrong here. That's what it sort of feels like. Like it doesn't feel good. Too much dukkha. It's not quite hitting the spot. No matter what I do, it doesn't hit that spot I'm trying to hit. There's some eerily sense of I'm trying to hit a spot, but I just cannot seem to hit that spot. Something like that. And honestly, I don't know if I don't know if I've ever hit the spot, but it's absolutely clear there is a direction that you go. You know, there's definitely a clear awareness this is the way to go about things. But you're not sure, like you're not absolutely sure what the spot is. Hmm. Yeah, I don't know. I like these questions, by the way, Michael. Usually people don't ask these kinds of questions. They're really like
Well, I'm
good
trying
to
to
think
clarify
about.
something to the people listening here. And because it's difficult because, people ask for, what advice would you give to a beginner? Because most people see the happiness that they're already familiar with as happiness. And maybe you'll agree or not, but there comes a point where those things are no longer seen as the source of happiness. Those exact things that were seen as the source of happiness are now seen as dukkha. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, it definitely dawns on people over time.
And it's the point of seeing those things that were formerly seen as happiness as dukkha that the mind starts to become free. Do you agree so far?
Yeah,
Yeah, so that's what I was kind of trying to get you to talk about a little bit was, and you did. You spoke about the monastic lifestyle of sense restraint and being exposed to other people who are joyful in the Dhamma. Because what I encounter a lot with people new to the Dhamma or just moving in the wrong direction is trying to have their cake and eat it too, in a way, like trying to hold on to the sense of happiness that they've had their whole life, that ignorance has conditioned them to see as happiness, and gain the joy of the Dhamma. But the two don't go together.
yeah. I mean, it's like that. I remember Dhammarato said the truth sets you free, but first it kind of pisses you off. I've never
Yes,
been
that's
more
very
true.
true. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
I gotta be
it
honest with you,
reminds me
Michael.
of
Like,
it reminds me of that biblical thing actually. Like you, I don't know if this comes from Jesus or whatever, but like somebody says this, it's very interesting. You can't serve two masters
Something like
and
Yes.
gain the kingdom of heaven or something like that. Maybe.
that.
Yeah, you can't serve two masters.
Yeah, something like
I
that.
think
I think that's super true.
something in the New Testament. Yeah.
yeah,
Keller, you
when
want
I
to say?
first joined this place, Michael, I thought, because you were talking a lot about dispassion and stuff, and I thought that sounded super lame. Honestly, I was like, it kind of like really rubbed me the wrong way. I don't like. I got so frustrated about it. Like, man, this is such a downer. But more and more, I'm seeing like, wow, like it's not like it's like dispassion to things that are just like harmful and painful. Like,
Hmm.
and like that's not a that's not a downer. That's like that's great. That's awesome. I mean, how nice to not want the things that hurt us.
Exactly. There you go.
Mm.
Yes,
No,
that's it.
I really appreciate all of your comments and stuff, Michael. It's yeah,
Yeah,
it's
there's a
not an
sutta.
easy thing to talk about dispassion. Definitely, I feel like I don't see it so much. Like,
Mhm.
So I have a question. At what point does like the simple act of enjoying something become clinging, become dukkha?
The act of enjoying something. Um, I think it's when you see the dukkha without having to have a very perfect view. It's when you see the dukkha, it's dukkha. But up until then, you're just gonna do it anyway. You know,
That makes sense.
like whatever you think you're
Yeah.
gonna enjoy, you're gonna enjoy it until you see the dukkha without having a strong statement about um where like there is a where the dukkha really is. You have to see it for yourself. You really truly do. Um, which ties into following rules don't liberate you because you're just gonna break the rules because you're just gonna want too much, and that
Mm.
craving is strong. And so it becomes clear when you see it in that moment, whenever that moment occurs. Whenever it takes away whenever it takes your enjoyment away, basically, in that very moment, that's when you can
Okay.
turn that around. drop it.
That makes sense.
So if you see the clinginess, that grasping mind to just go on and on, if you see that's actually like making you uncomfortable and unhappy, you're gonna pull out. But actually, many people see that, but they let it grow until it becomes quite painful, and then pull it out. You know, until which shows you actually sensuality and clinging and upadana, this this grasping and clinging is dukkha. But we don't usually
Hmm.
see it on that perfect moment of like when it actually does happen. Generally, it grows a bit. Like that ideal of when it does happen, um, we see it when only when we do see it as dukkha.
Right. Yeah. It just reminds me of like there's like a meme of a person licking an ice cream cone, and like the second they take the lick and they move away from the ice cream cone, they already want another one, and they're already thinking about the next one while they still have the ice cream in their mouth. So
Yeah. So I
I
don't
think
know.
what
Yeah, go ahead.
and like if I say anything that you don't agree with, please tell me. But what I hear and what you're saying is there's a certain wisdom that arises in the mind um, that sees clinging itself as dukkha. So it doesn't even matter what the mind is clinging to. Um, it's only clinging to dukkha. There's a sutta where Anathapindika is talking about the Dhamma with non-Buddhists, and he expresses his right view in that way. He says basically, whatever one is clinging to, it's only suffering that one is clinging to. Essentially, it's just another way that right view is expressed. Clinging in itself, even if it's to something that it seems beautiful and pleasurable, is dukkha, because everything is impermanent. So I mean, anything that you cling to is only clinging to dukkha, and so you develop this dispassion towards clinging itself, and then when the mind becomes dispassionate towards clinging itself, then it dwells unconditionally happy. I'll use that language. It dwells unconditionally happy because when it's dispassionate and towards clinging due to seeing clinging itself as dukkha, then it just abides in non-clinging, and that's the joy of renunciation that the Buddha talks about. It seems that's what I'm sensing from you, Cathal. Would you agree or no?
Yes, and there's also a lot of uh I find that there's a lot of ways in talking about that development in a way you can cling to it in just a phrase of a language. Like when the Buddha talks about like crossing the ocean or a river with a raft, like you want to build a raft, and sort of
Hmm.
in that phrasing, not exactly craving the tanha, but craving to the development of the destruction of tanha is a kind of a clinging. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So I think that's something maybe
Like a
people
wholesome
sometimes.
clinging you're speaking of.
Yeah, cling. Yeah, I guess clinging. The word clinging. Clinging to the end of clinging, whatever that looks like,
Or
or
to the
that raft.
means to the end of clinging. Yeah.
Yeah, that raft one wants to be quite strong and nice and comfy. You don't want to jump off halfway because there might
Yeah.
be like some view about when the drop. Same with the bread or whatever.
Hmm.
Holding on can be useful until it's not. Like, yeah, that's it about dropping the boat or dropping the raft when it's the fulfillment is already over. You could just drop it and move on. It becomes a burden
There's
then.
there's even a sutta where the Buddha compares the path to like a tool that one is using, and you just keep using it, and you're not thinking too much about it, and then eventually you look down and you realize that it's been worn down to a nub. You're like, oh, I don't need this anymore. It's like an arhat who's like kind of been an arhat for a little while, didn't realize it. It's kind of like, oh, I don't
Yeah.
need to keep working anymore. I guess I can stop.
Yeah.
But yeah, you don't want to throw the tool away while it's still, needs to be used,
Yeah.
like the raft.
So I don't know if this call was like recorded today, but if it wasn't, that's alright. It's a bit tricky, isn't it? I don't know. I can't record on my
I think it
phone.
is.
I have a question actually for Kat regarding being a monk.
Yeah.
What was there anything when you ordained that was there anything you found very difficult to kind of adjust to? That was like a big like like
Yeah.
was it quite smooth?
Yeah. Community life. I
Okay.
still not. I don't consider myself adjusted to community life now. I mean, it's all every day. It's really a practice. Community life for sure. I think
What do you
that's
mean
number one. It's
exactly with community life?
like being around like 40 or 50 bhikkhus,
Mm,
monks, and all the stuff that goes on
mm,
in that community. I mean, it's just like a big family, and all the same
mm.
stuff that goes on in a normal family starts coming up.
Is it
So
mostly other Westerners at the Sangha you're at?
yeah, there's a couple, but not many in here. There's a couple.
Okay.
Uh, it if you come to a monastery, you can go to a big monastery. You can go to a hermitage. You can go to a sala. You can live with one monk. You can live with 100 monks. You know. Um, but yeah, like in your question, community life has always been hard for me.
Mm,
It still is quite a challenge to fit in and be friendly, and especially with people like who I don't feel that friendliness with. I consider my teachers in the Dhamma and all that kind of
mm,
stuff. And there's a few things like living in a kuti, in a really small kuti and stuff like that. Restlessness coming up and stuff. But I just consider it, I mean, it's all just part of practice.
mm.
I see a
I
lot
guess
of the
it's
monks who've
like
been monks for 10 or 15 years are really good with that stuff.
mm,
Around, it seems to be around the 10-year mark, which funnily enough is when someone is like officially quote unquote considered an Ajahn is after 10 years of monastic life. Seems to
mm,
be like the monks who have been there in it for 10 years are like really good at being a monk, really contented, really happy and stuff like that. Really happy and very friendly with everybody. Senior monks. Yeah.
mm. Yeah. I guess it's like that aspect is not so different from like those I guess issues with community life can pop up really anywhere, like going off to college or like join the military or like anything like that really. I suppose it's
Mm.
like kind of get it like just like adjusting to that. um yeah, it's
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, you gotta fit in. You gotta fit in and be okay with all of these people seeing all of your stuff and all that kind of stuff. You can't, and part of it is stop concealing all your wrongdoings and all your flaws. Be okay with being criticized. So,
Mm,
very adjusting process. But I really feel like it's much more, you really feel a lot more peaceful, definitely. Like just being very open and actually being okay with that. Um, I think maybe monastic life is a little bit different than other communities because there's so much
mm,
loving kindness in the Sangha. There's so much
mm.
metta, so much loving kindness. I don't know if it's the same with every other place. like a, like a, uh, what did you say? A military,
Yeah, or like you
military?
like going off to college, like dorms or something like that.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit different in those places.
Yeah.
Like you feel very cared for and open, and in a Sangha, in a really noble Sangha, you really feel open and cared for. Like you are not being criticized for the way you are, which invites you to open up and make a change rather than like kind of not wanting anybody to see that stuff.
Mm.
It,
Like
it,
no
it
need to
actually lets
defend
you
yourself.
let go so much of some stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of like you said last time, Cat, about like not needing to defend yourself. And I guess in that kind of community, it's much easier to drop that kind of like instinctual, like, oh, I got to defend
Yeah,
myself. I got to. Yeah. Nice.
yeah. There is nothing worth defending. Whatever you think you have to defend, is not worth ever.
Mm.
So okay, guys. If there is not any more questions, perhaps we can end the call. If
Yes, I
anybody
think.
doesn't want to ask me.
Oh, yeah. Do you want to go through everyone like how Dhammarato tell
Yeah,
you to?
yeah, yeah. Thanks for reminding me. Uh thank you for reminding me. You just make it a point to ask people this, ask people. So, how about Eunice? Oh, Eunice is still here. What do you want to share
Yes.
anything, or do you have anything you want to ask her?
Yeah, thanks. Excellent call. Really like the topic, and I also find it interesting how like, for example, with video games, sometimes like I get the desire to play video games and I do it and I enjoy it, and it's just like for 5 minutes and then it goes. And that's like, I think, where a lot of the dukkha comes up. It's like, oh, I keep playing the video game trying to make the desire come back. It's almost I want to crave. I have like a craving to crave. Uh, yeah, it's like the gratification of the desire, I guess. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So like in this call, like how would you put in the, like what they call in the suttas the gratification of sensuality? Because we've talked a lot about the danger, but they also talk about the gratification.
Yeah, I think
Like you
there's
have to
the Buddha.
understand the gratification, because otherwise you're denying that there is pleasure in there, like how it works.
Yeah, yeah. Uh, I think the Buddha gives a really good way of talking about in the sense of the drawback, danger, and gratification of sensuality in the the deer feeding in the park thing. That sutta. God,
Mm,
it's so over my head now. I think I would recommend looking at that in the sense of there is a way to um um there is a correct comprehension of the fact there is, like, let's say you're eating the food, where does that line between doing that necessary experience into sensuality, where does the mind start to feed, and one becomes mindless when they're
mm,
eating with their mind, and the craving starts to take over. Where is that actual line between dukkha and keeping that peace, that luminosity? Where does the defilement start to darken the mind? Truly comprehending that. I
mm.
haven't looked at that suit in so long, but I think that's a good one. Maybe we can go over that if there is going to be another call, because it's a good one.
Yeah, yeah,
Sensuality is
that's an
always
interesting one. Yeah, because there is also like the deers in that sutta. There is a group of deer that ends up getting caught by the hunter, and they're like saying, "Oh, like screw this, screw the baits. We're not gonna eat. We're gonna go high up in the mountain, away from it all." But then they kind of fold at the end, like they're like starving, and they go back again, carelessly eating.
yeah.
Yeah.
Also, what you said about like the desire to be addicted, basically, like the desire for craving. There was an interesting Dhamma talk about that from Ajahn. This is a while ago too. I'm sorry if it's a little bit paraphrasing Ajahn Ninamoli about that, but actually, what we're really searching for is to get out of hindrances, which is what
Mm.
that momentary immersion does into sensuality. It takes you out of your dukkha, actually, in a sense. Like you feel like in for a few moments like a mini samadhi when you get really sucked into something, but it doesn't ever free you. That's why addiction occurs. You keep using the same thing because the hindrances themselves are so uncomfortable
Yeah,
that we, we,
yeah,
we want to get addicted to something. It's like we crave for addiction. It's kind of crazy to say it like that, but that's the nature of the mind when it has nothing to do, when it's unstimulated. That's really where the practice sort of begins, actually, with training bhavana. is not non-stimulation, non-engagement, and training the mind from that point. Just wanted to mention that.
Mhm.
And
Yeah, thank you.
Timo, do you want to add anything? Do you want to say anything? Oh, you have a camera on. Okay.
No, not much, but yeah, I think that that's really a thing. I saw, for example, I used to smoke, not very heavily, but for a long time. I just liked it a lot. I couldn't think of letting it go, and that's how it felt with the like I giving myself the addiction in order to have something gain pleasure from. Like you want it because you know if you have the addiction, it feels so great to engage in it. Instead of having no addiction, you're scared of it, like because you're looking for this friction and the removal of the friction. Like you, in a way, you are looking for dukkha nirodha. In order to really make it grandiose, you make the dukkha strong as well. So when it goes away, I think we're creating this kind of situations with addictions sometimes. Like we're really going into it because everybody knows certain substances are addictive, and you still do it anyways because you think, "Ah, okay, but video games, cigarettes, or whatever, it's something you can always go to, like usually in it's available in our society and so on. But yeah, I mean, everybody here knows that it's not a good strategy, but it's very common. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, also happiness, like it's a skill that you develop with your mind. That's actually like a skill. You can create happiness through just wholesome thoughts. So you can have something to feed on. The mind loves to feed, you know. It wants to feed on cigarettes and video games, but you can actually create happiness in your mind. It is a skill to be developed. Um, and Oz, do you want to say anything? Share anything?
It was a very nice call. I really enjoyed that. Hope it got recorded so I can listen again.
I'm
But
not
yeah,
sure
I
if we got. I don't think it
think
did.
just keeping the eyes on the prize, so to speak. I think is a really nice. That's what I take away from this. Like really,
Yes.
because it's like I'm at this stage now where it's like I'm starting to become a bit disenchanted with the whole chasing stuff, but it's like I still do it because it's like the old habit, and
And all habits.
right. And like kind of just
Yes.
like seeing that, and yeah, really like I kind of my cake and eat it too, you know. Like, and there's no point in trying to do that. Like trying to like, oh, I'm gonna go out for drinks with my friends, but don't worry, I'm gonna like I'll deal with that dukkha. Like, but instead it's like, well, you know, why don't I just like not go drinking? I mean, you know, it's it's kind of it's all very obvious. Like it's all very simple. So no, I appreciate it, Cat. Always a pleasure.
Okay, thank you. And how about Michael? Would you like to share any more stuff with us? Perhaps he's not here. Perhaps so. How about Krishni?
Michael says all good
Krishni?
here.
All good. Okay. Yes. Thank you for the questions too, by the way. I like those questions. Krishni, I haven't seen you in a good while. Would you like to share anything?
Oh, hello. No, I haven't
Hello.
prepared any questions.
Does anything come to
You
mind?
can. Oh, not at the moment.
Okay.
Thanks for the talk.
That's not a bad thing. It could be a good thing.
Mm. I'm
Cool,
just
cool.
okay.
Okay, how about good, good. Good. Oh, good enough. Okay is good enough. You can let that grow, you know. Keep letting it be okay until it's grand. And how about Carwin? Would you like to share anything before we are closing off the call? Okay. Carwin's maybe not here. How about Jonas? Oh,
Sorry, Kat. Yeah.
yeah.
No, I've nothing to say. Thank you so much for the call, and yeah, see you next time.
Okay. See you next time. Hopefully, that's next week. I'm not sure. How about I don't know if Daniel is maybe gonna do the call. Actually, gonna see Daniel next week. How about Jonas? Would you like to share anything?
No, I'm good. Thanks for the call as well, Pat. Yeah, it was a pleasure. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. How about Ivan? Would you like to share any last remarks or anything?
No, but I'm very curious. What does a monk do after 7 p.m.? What are you doing like that?
Well, 7
Are you
p.m. is
meditating?
the nighttime. 7 p.m. is
Mm.
nighttime. It's the best time for just doing nothing, really. It's the nicest time. It's the cool time. It's when it's not too hot, you know. It's extremely hot in Thailand now, and the daytime is not the best time for samadhi. You could do it, but it's not too nice. And there's no electricity up here, so it's really a little bit of a enduring a part of the life. But nighttime is the best time. You actually feel the most awake in this time until about 10 or 11 or 12.
Is it it's like meditating and like walking meditation at night
Yes.
time for you? I see.
Yeah. Just some chokram and then sitting and chokram and sitting. Try to just practice that. Well, sorry, when I say chokram, I do be walking meditation. Walking and
Thank you.
sitting. And how about Caleb? Would you like to?
Yeah. I just want to say thank you so much for coming here and sharing and talking with us. It's always a joy, and I appreciate it a lot. I get a lot out
Thank
of it.
you.
So yeah, thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you, guys. So we're going to end the call. And if this was on YouTube, see you guys soon. Goodbye.
Goodbye, Cathal.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you
Bye
very
bye.
much.
Thank you. Bye.
Have a good one. Take
Bye.
care.